Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about what is play for our lecture. Just a few agenda items. Please make sure that you complete the Get to Know Me post if you have not already. So that includes your own post as well as commenting on two peers' posts. You also have a reading for this week from your FRW, Play and Child Development text, Chapter 1. So make sure you read that prior to completing your discussion post, number 1. And that is all I have for agenda items. Please make sure you do your reading, and then your discussion post and Get to Know Me post are due this Sunday, 9/3. Okay, so let's jump right in and brainstorm. What is play? How do we make sense of the meaning of play? I want you to think about the word play. So close your eyes for a moment and imagine what play looks like for you. Maybe you imagine yourself playing as a child, or an image of items you would play with, a specific type of play you would engage in, or maybe it's even people who you would play with. Do you still play as an adult? What does that look like? Play is a concept that means something slightly different depending on who you talk to or where somebody comes from, where they live. There's so many different contexts of play. For centuries, play has been an idea with a variety of different meanings. Not only does play have different meanings, but play is influenced by various factors such as culture, age, and abilities. Your text describes play as the foundation for learning in mental health and families, as well as the cornerstone for developmentally appropriate practices. So just how do we determine what play is? Now that you've had some time to think about what is play and what play looks like for you, we're going to talk about the definition of play and what that looks like. Well, play has many definitions. The items on this slide represent some of the definitions that are generally agreed upon in play literature. So first of all, we want to think of play as needing to be intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. Oftentimes we hear the two terms, intrinsic and extrinsic. So we'll get into extrinsically motivated a little bit later. But right now we're going to talk about play and how it's intrinsically motivated. To be intrinsically motivated means that children should be playing because they want to. They should be playing because it makes them feel happy, and they should be playing because it feels rewarding to them. Dewey looked at play in this regard and saw play as a way to internalize knowledge as well as provide a window for children to be intrinsically motivated for exploration of the natural world. Now, not only do we want play to be intrinsically motivated, we want play to be freely chosen by its partners. So not only should children find play self-rewarding, they need to be able to freely choose their play. This means they choose what they want to play, when they want to play it, who they want to play with, and how their play is going to be constructed. When we allow children the opportunity to have the freedom of choice in their play, we tap into the developmental appropriateness of play. So for example, maybe children are playing and they say, this is so much fun, or this is exactly how I wanted to do this, or maybe we ask them what they want to play and they say, I want to do this. We can also look at play as a positive affect. Looking at play with a lens that benefits the child as a whole can create a positive affect towards play itself. We want children to be excited when they play. We want children to evoke determination as they're playing on their own, and we want them to feel proud about their ideas during play. Maybe children are smiling or laughing while they're playing, or they're saying, yeah, or I'm having so much fun, like I was mentioning earlier. So different ways of showing their excitement or expressing their joy during play can allow that positive affect to come forth. Play should also be non-literal, non-literal. This means that when children are playing, they are basically removed from the here and the now, and it's almost like they're transported to someplace else to be different, and someplace that's a different time or a different place, or maybe they're even just a different person. There's so many different possibilities, and imagination can be endless if we let children engage in non-literal play. Imagination really is the key to successful play. And there are so many more possibilities for exploration when children have the freedom to let their imagination run wild. So, for example, maybe children are using paint as pizza sauce and they are a chef, or they're using a ball as a magic orb to tell fortunes in a faraway land with fairies and dragons. Who knows? Like I said, the possibilities are endless when play is non literal. So, next, having this freedom also allows us to have unconstrained play. It leads to unconstrained play. When children are constrained, they are not given the chance to be autonomous. They're not given the chance to showcase their skills and their abilities. Children become limited if we try and force them to play in certain ways. So this does not mean that there aren't any rules or any constraints placed on play. It means that the rules and constraints come from the players themselves and not from the outside entities. So maybe children want to play a game of house, but instead of you deciding who's going to be the mommy, who's going to be the daddy, who's going to be the sister and the brother, and any other family members, the children are deciding for themselves. They're dictating and assigning roles for one another. Second to last, emphasis on the process. So play is tied to emphasis on the process, and if we take away the process of play, we're again, excuse me, we're again being limiting to children, and we're limiting the flow of their ideas, and unfortunately then we're putting an emphasis on the product and the final outcome rather than the initial spark of a child's idea, the unfolding of how the unfolding of how the idea can be produced, and then the production itself of their idea. The entire process is part of play. So a child might be building a house and they want to gather a bunch of blue blocks for their house and place them one by one on top of each other, and they are deciding, they came up with this idea. They said, I have a doggy at home and I want to build a house for them, and they told you that they were going to use blue blocks and they had to place them meticulously one on top of another in order to create this house for their dog. And this was the way that the process was unfolding, step by step, based on the child's rules. They freely chose it. There were no constraints on them. And last but not least, play creates a situation where children are actively engaged. So our friend who was building their house meticulously, we can see the active engagement happening as their ideas unfold and the process of play is laid out in front of us. So this means that children are fully focused. They're paying attention. They're enjoying what they're doing while they're playing. A creative theorist, let me make sure I say the name correctly. A creative theorist, Csikszentmihalyi. I will make sure to put the name in our text just to make sure. But they refer to the state of active engagement as a flow, when you're completely engaged with not only your mind but your body and your spirit. So mind, body, and spirit are all interconnected and we're actively engaged at once. In the next slide, we're going to be discussing work, now that we've kind of determined what play is, and then following that, we're going to be talking about the relationship between work and play. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the definition of play and what it entails, we're going to focus on work. Just as we brainstorm some ideas about play, we're going to do the same for work. So I want you to close your eyes again just for a moment and imagine what work looks like to you. How are you feeling when thinking about work in comparison to when you were thinking about play? Do you feel the same? Do you feel different? Do you feel more effort needing to be put in when you're completing a task related to work versus when you are engaging in an element of play? Well, that might be because work is defined as the physical or mental effort used to complete a task, and it does differ from play. And when we often think of work, we might not be thinking about it in a relationship to play. However, there are similarities and differences, and there is a play work continuum, which we're going to get into in a little bit, that distinguishes how play looks and how work looks in the context of a person's life as a whole. So just like play, work has many definitions, and the items on this slide are also generally agreed upon in the play literature. The items are meant to showcase how work is the opposite perspective to play. First, bringing back that extrinsically motivated. Extrinsic motivation is the opposite of intrinsic motivation, meaning that work is completed because we have to do it, quote unquote, or it's something that we do in order to get a task done and receive an outside reward. Work is also often not chosen by ourselves, and it's chosen by others. And the type of work we're expected to complete is not something that we come up with on our own. During work, children are often controlled to adhere to rules on what they should work on, when they should work on it, how they should work on it, and who they should work with. So maybe as a child, you recall you're told what chores to do, and you're assigned A through C on the house to-do list, and your sibling is assigned D through E on the to-do list. Work also creates a range of affect, which means that it is most likely mundane or boring in comparison to the positive affect that is evoked when we are engaging in play. So think about if you ask a child, would you rather play or would you rather work? What do you think that they would say? Or even as an adult, would you rather go out and play or would you rather work all day? The feelings generated during play, such as joy, can be constricted with the feelings generated during work, so neutral or mildly negative feelings. You're feeling drained at the end of the day after work, or maybe you need a boost of energy, like a coffee to keep you going. That can kind of give you an idea of the range of affect, that negative or neutral feeling that you might be having. Unlike play, work does not have a non-literal feeling or sense as play does. Work is strictly literal, and it is confined to the real world, how the real world functions with real world problems, real world people. Ooh, try and say all that 3 times fast. Real world problems, real world people, real world feelings, and real world expectations. It's all in the real world. There's no imagination. Children are not transported to another time, another place, or becoming another role. Everything is the real world here and now. And there's a lot less freedom during work, and it's often constraining. Feeling constrained causes limitations in children's thought processes during tasks like work, and the restraints are limiting them from a wide range of opportunities and possibilities to explore the world around them. And this is because during work, children are not able to make their own decisions. They're not able to create rules for how work can be accomplished. This is a different idea than play, because during play, children are the creators and they're the rule makers. They're the dictators of how the play unfolds, and they're not constrained by outside influences. So I just want you to think about if I asked you to draw a flower, and I said, okay, I would like everyone to get out a piece of paper and draw a flower. Maybe we're in, a 3rd grade classroom, and I ask all my children, I want you all to draw a flower. And then I say, but when you're drawing that flower, I want that flower to have 3 petals, and I want all 3 petals to be pink. And I want the center of your flower to be a circle and for it to be yellow. And then I want you to draw a long, skinny green stem with 1 leaf on it. That's a lot of rules, and I'm limiting the creativity of simply just drawing a flower. Whereas during play, children would have the opportunity to get their creative juices flowing and come up with what a flower looks like to them using their imagination. As mentioned earlier, play also emphasizes process, where work is the opposite. Work gives an emphasis on the product. And when children are shown emphasis on product over emphasis on process, this means that there's only one focus, and it's on that final outcome, completing that task at hand. And during work, there's an end goal, and the end goal is finishing. And the enjoyment of the steps, the step-by-step process that happens during the emphasis of process is taken out, and it solely is just to get to the final end product. And last but not least, work can be thought of as a rote task. So this means that it's something that we're doing without thinking, in the sense that it devalues the meaningfulness behind it. So rote tasks refer to things that we do without thinking or needing to be fully present, in a sense. So these are things we might do on a daily basis that don't require our full attention. So maybe when you're driving to work every day and you get there, it kind of just feels like you've been on autopilot all morning. So in the next slides, we're going to discuss the relationship between work and play, and then the work-play continuum. Okay, so now that we have discussed play and we have discussed work, let's think about the relationship between work and play. So I want you to please watch the TED Talk video, The Puzzle of Motivation by Daniel Pink. And while you're watching, I want you to think about how he describes work and play. Is there an overlap between the two, or are they opposite ends of the continuum? And you're also going to be utilizing this video as part of your discussion post. So if you need to, I would recommend that you take notes while watching the video. And then last but not least, we're going to be talking about the play-work continuum. Okay, so looking at the play-work continuum, we oftentimes see our lives as not just solely play or solely work. There's most likely a middle ground that encompasses the ideas of both play and work. So, for example, children might be provided with an activity by their teacher that they did not choose on their own. But while engaging in the activity, children can still feel joy and have fun while they're participating. Or another example might be you're doing work, you're at work, and you find yourself being actively engaged when you're sharing ideas with a group of your coworkers, and you're actively engaged when you're listening to what they have to contribute to the conversation. So overall, this idea of work-play continuum is just an introduction to a larger concept of what play can look like for children, how play is an essential part of their learning, and also what the role of adults are in children's play. So we're going to be revisiting all of these concepts across the semester, and this is just a small introduction.